Francesca Piccoli is a researcher at the University of Bern working on metamorphic petrology, and she obtained her PhD at a master's at the University of Paris, and she's currently starting her second postdoc at the University of Bern. And Giulia Guidobaldi is a geologist on quaternary glacial geology and geochronology. She obtained her PhD in Pisa and her master in Rome, and since 2017, she worked at the Laboratory of Ion Beam Physics at ETH and in collaboration with the USL Biemensdorf and University of Geneva. So let's skip to her, let's listen their talk, which is titled A Report on Gender Diversity and Equality in Geoscience, an analysis of the Swiss Geoscience meeting from 2003 to 2019. Many thanks.
Thanks, Silvia. We are very happy to present you the analysis and the results of 17 years of Swiss Geoscience meetings in terms of gender diversity and equality trends. This work was supported by the Swiss Academy of Sciences, the University of Bern, ETH-Zürich, and the newborn GEODS committee. The relative report will be available soon, open access in the Swiss Journal of Geosciences. So our data set was compiled based on the data available in the Swiss Geoscience meeting website and on attendance lists provided by the organizing committee. So we know as a fact that the proportion of women progressively decreases with advancing career stages. This phenomenon is known as a leaky pipeline and happens to be particularly prominent, as we already heard, in the STEM disciplines. The scarcity of data related to the proportion of men and women in the different career stages makes it difficult to assess the reasons of this problem and provide eventual solutions. In this framework, our work is exactly motivated by this, by the necessity of improving the amount of available data related to the distribution of the gender for the single career stages. With this report in particular, we want to give you the outlook of the Swiss Geoscience through the Swiss Geoscience meeting over the last 17 years. The Swiss Geoscience meeting was held continuously from 2003, providing a data set, a constant data set of the gender distribution evolution. Since 2003, the number of total participants increased, almost doubling, and reaching a peak of 809 participants in 2018. The increase of participation is reflected also in the increase in the contributions as talks and posters, and in the increase of people involved as conveners and chairpersons, as we can see here. Now, if we analyze the academic stage and the gender distribution independently, we see how a significant fraction of the participants is represented by students, more or less around 40%, and this value remained practically constant over all the 17 years. In terms of gender, we see that women represent a minority, but increased from 2005 until 2019 from 25% to 37%. Here it's worth to mention that within our data set, it was not possible to retrieve data related to precise academic positions. So in our report, we consider students as bachelor, masters, and PhDs, and scientists as people after studies or people with advanced career stage. As you can see here, there is a very low percent of participants that we were not able to for which we were not able to retrieve the gender, because basically we did a manual checking, and in rare cases we were not able to retrieve where it was a woman or a man. So if now we combine, we plot together the female, the gender distribution and the academic stage, we can see how the female population is represented for around 60% by students, with the only exception of 2019, where the scientists were more than half. In contrast, within the male population, scientists very rarely go under 65%. If now we analyze the gender distribution within the single academic stages, we see how within the students, women represent more or less 40% of the population, whereas among the scientists, they represent more or less 1/4, with men very rarely going under 75%, with the exception of the last 3 years, where apparently the situation is getting better. So the negative trend is already present within the studies from the data that we have from the Earth Sciences of Switzerland, where from bachelor students to PhD students, we already assisted to a slight decrease of women. Nevertheless, it's evident that the real dropout occurs after the PhD. And it's here that our pipeline is indeed leaking. But before passing the word to Francesca, I want to leave you with 2 positive news. The first is that within the 17 years, we assist to a steady increase of women participation from 25 to 37%. And then if we have a look at the students' population, since 2003 until today, the women increased until reaching an almost perfect gender balance. And who knows, maybe in the next years, we will welcome as many young scientists, young female scientists in our community. So yeah, thanks. I pass word to Francesca, who will drive us into more details of our study.
Okay, thank you, Giulia. So now I think we can pass to the hardest part of the work we have done. So what we wanted to do was also to have a closer look to the gender distribution among participants. And I'm saying it's the hardest part because we had to basically manually check and compile the abstract volumes since 2003 up to 2019. So here is what we found. We had a look to the abstract volumes and all the talk and poster presentation. We classified them according to the first gender offer. What we see here to the left is that for both talk and poster presentations, we have a general increase of the numbers and the percentage of female authors each year. And this is a very positive trend. And this trend is also mimicking the general increase of women participants in total to the SGM. So this is a very positive news, we will say, because it seems to indicate that there is no gender bias in assigning talk or poster presentation. However, if we have a look to conveners and chairpersons that are here to the right, you can see that still we do see an increase of women conveners and chairpersons through the years, but is very, very slow. Very, very low, and it's not as good as talk and poster presentation. And if we are looking carefully to the data, we realize that this is probably because for most of the session, there has never been a turnover of conveners and chairpersons during all the SGM editions. And so this lack of change in role model and position given to people is also reflected in a decision-making position, such as those in the committees. For the SGM, we have 2 main committees. One is the local organizing committee,
and the other one is the program committee. So the local organizing committee is in charge of the organization of the event and the plenary session, and the program committee is in charge of the scientific content of the conference. So as you can see here, the situation is kind of not as good as for the talk poster presentation. Female are highly underrepresented, especially in the program committee. So that one is in charge of scientific content, where in 6 out of 14 years, the percentage of female members of this committee were below 7%. And this is also reflected in like the role model positions such as plenary lecture, when you can see here to the right that in 6 out of 17 years, all invited speakers were exclusively males. So we have 2 positive exceptions here. One is the 2017 edition and 2018 edition, where we have a higher female representation, but it's worth to mention that in the case of the 2018 edition, this was is not a coincidence, it was a decision of the local organizing committee to have a gender balance in the plenary lecture speaker. So another, this is goes in the same trend of what Giulia has showed you. So we do lose scientists, female scientists along the way. So it's a vertical gender segregation. But what we also wanted to have a look at was the horizontal gender segregation. So how gender distribution looks like among different geoscience fields. This was not an easy task because we do not have absolute numbers of geoscientists for different geoscience fields. So what we tried to do was to take sessions that have been held for many years, and here you have 2 examples, the quaternary science session and the structural geology, tectonics and geodynamics session. We chose these 2 because they have been held for more than 10 years. So this prevents possible biases due to annual variability of number of abstracts and contribution, male and female authors. As you can see in these 2 sessions, we have a clear different situation. We have a much more prominent female representation in the quaternary science than with respect to the structural geology field. The reason of this, we don't know yet, but you can see that this is also the case for conveners and chairpersons. So conveners in quaternary science are much more diverse. So this seems to indicate that the geoscience suffers of an horizontal gender segregation. So we should not only look at total number, for example, total number of students or total number of PhD and postdocs, but we should also have a closer look to the single geoscience field. Then, last point, prizes and awards. So we think this is also another important aspect because we know that prizes and awards are a viable method to encourage young scientists and students to pursue an academic career. But again, so we had to try to compile a data set with what was available. We found 7 different prizes, so for a total of 130 recipients. And the prizes are listed here below. And the data are plotted in this graph where the white line corresponds to the number of recipients. So we do see a very diverse situation depending on which prize we are looking at. And this is also due to factors and variables such as criteria of eligibility. But what we can see is that prizes have been held since like same year, 2008, 2004, 2008. We do have a very different gender distribution. So today we would like to focus on the best master thesis prize. This is because it's a good example. So we do have the data of the master students in our science. We know that master students are very close to a perfect gender balance, so 50-50, but female recipients for the best master thesis prize are only 17%. So this indicates that female students are less likely to be nominated. To come to the conclusion, it has already been said quite a few times this morning. I'm very happy about that. We realized that collecting data is absolutely fundamental if you want to monitor the progress in gender diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what we have done so far, I think was a hard work, but it's definitely not enough because this data set is incomplete in the sense that there are many important information that are missing, such as the precise academic stage and career position. Another important point that came out from this analysis is the importance of role models. So we really do think that having a healthy turnover of conveners, chairpersons, can improve some aspects like help networking of young scientists, and maybe eventually also improve what we found being present in the geoscience, so the horizontal gender segregation. So we do think that during this meeting we should try to overcome this problem and offer more diverse role models. And last point, prizes. There seems to be a clear problem in the nomination procedure. So what we think is that probably we should try to think other type of nominations, such as the open nomination of the self-nomination. With that, I conclude. We thank for the attention. And so, yeah, about the report, it will be soon available on the Swiss Journal of Geoscience. We are taking care of it.